Hi everyone, welcome. You're the 20 lucky ones that were able to book in early, which is good. So we're doing a, I think it's advertised as a masterclass, but it's sort of an introduction and tempering on chocolate. We're going to talk about some chocolates. How many people are thinking of coming to do a course here? That's good because it gives you a good sort of a bit of an introduction and insight of what we're doing. And I guess you've all probably had a look around at a lot of the other what's going on, especially downstairs, across there. Good, because you're quiet lot, aren't you? Okay. Well, as you can see, I'm Richard, and Susan is helping me over there.
Hello.
So we've got some, as I'm talking, we've also got some samples and things to sort of pass around for you to have a look at, things like that. So it makes it a little bit more interesting for you. Cacao is the plant, the tree that grows the cocoa beans, and it grows pods, which generally they're not quite this colour when they grow. This one's quite old, so they're normally sort of more of a reddy, yellow, green, purple colour. A little bit like the ones that you can sort of see down there, that sort of colour. That's what they're like. This one, as I say, is quite old, and it's dehydrated because it's dried out, and obviously it's gone black. And the cocoa beans inside are quite, as you can hear, it's all dehydrated as well. So the cocoa pods generally range in size from about the size of your fist to about the size of a football, depending on where they come from in the world. So the smaller ones often come from more sort of South America and Central America, whereas the larger ones generally come from Ghana and the Ivory Coast, where they produce 70% of the world's cacao. So the rest of the world produce the rest, which varies between Queensland to Hawaii from when you look at the latitude. So 20 degrees north and south of the equator is where we grow cacao. Because it needs to have the right sort of climate and humidity, etc., for the plants to grow. And it's also grown in Mexico, around the Yucatan Peninsula, where the Mayans first grew cacao and used that, and also used it as a currency as well as for eating and for drinks. And also down through Central America and then South America, Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, and Venezuela and Brazil as well. So we start off with a cocoa pod like so. It takes about 6 months for these to grow. So it starts off as a small flower on the branch or the trunk of the tree, and then it develops into a cacao pod, and then it takes 6 months to get to this stage, whether it's a small one or a larger one. From there, actually, what I might pass this one around while I'm talking, and then you can have a look. There's some pictures there of some. This is from Daintree Estate, which is in Queensland, which is just the southern part of the Daintree Forest. So that's here in Australia. And the person that started off Daintree Estate was the person from Cadbury. He said to Cadbury, "I think we should grow our own cacao," and they said, "No, you're talking rubbish." So he said, "Okay, I'll leave and I'll grow my own," and that's what he does up there. So, and he's doing well. So once we've got the cocoa pod and it's ripened after 6 months, they all picked off by hand. So you can see there's quite a thick stalk there. So it's all cut off with like either machete or like a small saw. Then we take out the cocoa pods and then we ferment them for sort of between 3 and 7 days. And so the cocoa beans, once they're taken out, they've got, you'll see in the picture there that it's got like a white sort of fleshy stuff around the cocoa beans. It's actually quite sweet if you eat it, and it tastes quite good. So they take all those out, they ferment them for sort of 3 to 7 days, and then they dry them, and then we get the cocoa beans here. Once we've got the cocoa beans, then once they've dried, then they ship them wherever they want to go. When we come to make them into chocolate, we roast them, and then we crack them and winnow them. So when we crack them, when you crush them, you get the outside husk coming off the cocoa bean, And then we chop those up into small pieces, which are called nibs, which are these ones here. So probably you might be familiar with nibs. You might have seen them in the health food shops and things like that for sale. If you want, perhaps we could pass those around. You can have a look at those. So the nibs are just the cocoa beans that have been chopped up into smaller pieces, and as it goes through the machine, which we call a winnower, it takes off the husks and separates them. So the husks, you can use them for composting, and there's a company in France which is also using them in packaging, which looks actually quite nice because it sort of flicks through the packaging. Once we then, with the nibs, then they're ground up into a paste, and then when we compress that paste, because that's called cocoa liquor, we then get cocoa butter, which is this one here. And we also have a cocoa butter replacer, which is this one, which is usually made from coconut oil or palm oil as well. They're usually coconut oil. So we're only allowed to put about, I think it's about 5% of the total weight of cocoa butter replacer into chocolate when we make it in Australia. So it's only a small percentage, which is good. Otherwise, it wouldn't taste the same as well. I'll pass that one around as well, if you like. You can just sort of see those. Also, cocoa butter is used in cosmetics, and also like ointments and creams and things like that. And that's the cocoa butter replacer. So once we compress our cocoa liquor, we get what we call cocoa cake. From there, we grind it, and then we make cocoa powder. I'll pass that one around as well. You can have a look at that one. And then from there, we can take the cocoa liquor, we can add a percentage of sugar to it. So whether you want 50% sugar or 30% or 80% chocolate, which, then we can adjust the quantities. So some of the bean to bar places, the small places now, just having like 2 ingredients, and it will just be the cacao and some sugar, and that's it. Larger companies like these ones will have, often they'll add cocoa butter to it to adjust the consistency of it or the viscosity. And also they add lecithin as well, which helps to make it more fluid. And also for large production, it's much better. The lecithin normally comes from soy, and all the larger companies have that. The chocolate we're using here at Angus is the Cocoa Barry, which is the same company as Callebaut. So it's sort of like 2 arms, if you like, and they're based in Switzerland, although originally a Belgian chocolate. Thank you. And Susan I think she's passing around some samples at the moment of the different chocolates. So there's some white, milk and dark. So these are more generic, and they're sort of mass produced, these ones that we use here. Then we've got these ones here, which are single origin. So they've got more distinctive flavors, especially just like in wine, we talk about the terroir, which is the environment, the altitude, the soil, the rain, all that sort of thing, the weather, etc. And different countries, so we get them from cocoa's grown in West Africa, Tanzania, Madagascar, also Vietnam, Indonesia, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Hawaii, North Queensland, and then across to Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Colombia, Peru, and also like Brazil and Bolivia. So they're all those countries, the chocolate has distinctive flavors, and that's where they've just got some single origin, so they're just from that country. You can also sometimes, some of the small bean to bar manufacturers will give you chocolate which is single origin, but also from a single farm, which can also be different. You might have, so for example, one from Ghana, but you might have different farms and they'll all have different flavors, just like wine. So it's quite complex. But once you sort of try these, the sort of more generic ones and that, because it's more, because they're producing so much, they need to have a sort of a consistent flavour. So that's why they take the beans from all over the world and they blend them and they get them always the same. Whereas these ones, I quite like the single origins because they're sort of individual characteristics. Then we've got some of these ones here. Well, actually, that's an example of cocoa butter, which is that one there. And these ones are different again in that they're what we call a Q fermentation. The company doesn't really give us a lot of information because obviously they want to patent it because they want to produce it. And they put enzymes in there when they do the fermentation, extra enzymes, and that helps to create different flavours as well, but also to help bring out the flavours of the terroir of the region, which again is even sometimes more interesting than some of the single origins. So it's quite complex.
We've got some samples here of the ones Richard's just talking about. So we've got the Q fermentation in the Ilunga, which is the milk chocolate in these samples. And then in the single origin, we have the Mexican, which is it 72%? 66%. So 66% cocoa. So they're for you to try. And I guess, as Richard's just been explaining, compare them to the ones we've just given you, which is the ones we use in our everyday classes. They're a pretty standard product, whereas these are triple the price and more specialised, and the flavours are supposed to be more complex. See if you can pick them.
Anyone know about the nutritional value of chocolate? Cacao? Sorry?
It's good for you.
Yeah, it is. Also, the higher the percentage of cacao, the much better. So, as I say, we'll talk about cacao being the the beans and the plant, etc. And then, of course, when we grind it, then we get cocoa, and then we make chocolate. But these ones here, for example, organic powder, and these people claim it's got 16 times more antioxidants than blueberries. It's good, isn't it? 13 times more than iron than spinach, 3 times more calcium than milk, and 2 times more magnesium than almonds. So cacao is good, I think, especially if you get like the 70% and up, then it's obviously more beneficial for you. And if you like the 100%, some 100% can be quite astringent and quite bitter and quite horrible, but some can actually be quite nice depending on where they come from. But yeah, a bit of information there, which I think is quite interesting. Also, when we look at chocolate, we look at different flavours. And on this one here, we've got a simple flavour wheel. But this one here is a bit more complex. And we've got things like floral, fresh, roasted, earthy, spicy, nutty, and fruity flavours. So I might pass that round. You can just sort of have a look and see. This one's actually from Ratio Chocolate, which is down Sydney Road. Also, when we look at, say, wine, coffee, and chocolate, we look at the flavour, or we think about their flavour and aroma compounds. Anyone have any idea how many aroma and flavour compounds there might be in wine? 24? A bit more than that? Okay, that's right. I don't expect you to know. That's fine. So with wine, they say there's about 200 flavour and aroma compounds in wine. In coffee, they say there's around 1,500. Chocolate, they reckon there's about 8,000. So you might be interested. So there's a lot of, it's really quite complex. So today I was going to give you a demo on tempering some Ruby. So Ruby came out, I think it was 2017 when they first launched it. Probably forgotten about through COVID because everyone was locked down. Has anyone tried Ruby? It's an interesting one. Some people think, yeah, it's really nice, and others think, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you love it. So it's got sort of more of a fruity flavour to it. Generally, the beans they use, again, this is a patent process, so they don't tell us much about it. It's sort of what people have heard and what they've sort of put together. It's generally they use a cacao bean from Brazil, and it's unfermented. and that helps. That's got that sort of specific reddish colour to it. But they also add citric acid to it, which gives it that sort of a little bit of an acidic flavour. So when you look at the colour of it, you think of like raspberries and strawberries, and the acidity of it helps to give you that mind that it's fruity. It's just like if you go and buy a fruit yogurt from the supermarket, like strawberry or raspberry, and there's generally not much fruit in it, but they put usually citric acid in there to help bring out the flavour and the colour of it, and the mind tells you that it's going to be fruity, and then you've got the citric flavour coming through, because strawberries and raspberries are generally a little bit acidic. They've got that sort of acidic flavour, probably more so raspberries. And then you're telling yourself that it actually tastes like that, when it does a little bit, but not as, I don't think, as much as they say. So there's this one here, which we're going to temper. Has anyone done tempering before? So I'm going to do the table method, which is the traditional method. If you haven't done it before, it's good to use a thermometer so that you get temperatures right. When you buy couverture, like these ones, they always have the tempering profile on the side of the bag. So, for example, when we're tempering chocolate, whether it's white milk or dark, we need to get it between 45 and 50 degrees for all the cocoa butter all the crystals to melt. So in cocoa butter, there's about 6 different crystals. 45 degrees, they're all melted. So generally with white and milk, we heat it up to at least 40. With dark, we heat it up to at least 45. So if you say 45 for all of them, then you're pretty well right. And then we have to cool it down. So for this one, we've got to cool it down to 27 degrees. So for the white one that was up here, that cools down to 25, 26. So the dark is usually around 27, 28. This one's got an interesting tempering profile. It's sort of like a cross between a white and a dark. Milk is similar to white, and then dark, we need to take it down, as I said, 27, 28, depending on the chocolate. If you're not sure, it will always have a little graph on the packet of what they suggest the temperature should be. Most chocolates are pretty much the same, like the heating temperatures are the same. The cooling temperatures can vary slightly for about a degree, and then we need to warm it up again to make it workable. So what we're doing is we've got at 45 degrees, we've got all the fat crystals are melted, and then when we cool it down, some of those fat crystals will start to set and some will still stay melted, because they all set and melt at different temperatures. And what we need to do is to get them into like a chain reaction or formation, so that one sets, which sets the other one off, and the other one and the other one. So it needs to go in that sort of chain reaction. Otherwise it won't temper properly and the crystals won't come together. Thanks. And then the chocolate will not set properly, so it won't have a snap, and it won't have a shine, and it won't have that nice melt in the mouth texture when you eat it. It'll be a bit sort of grainy. There's a couple of examples here. So this is just a dark one, just to give you an example. So it's sort of quite dull, and actually, it's got a bit of a break to it, but it's not what it normally is. It's a lot softer than normal. Let's see what this one's like. This one I did yesterday, mainly because I wanted to show you that if it's not tempered, the fat comes to the surface and you start to get spots and streaks on it. If you want, you could pass that around. Probably, actually, maybe I'll put it on there. It might be a bit easier for you to, if you want to pass that around, just have a look. It's probably more obvious on that one. And that's what we call fat bloom, where the fat comes to the surface. It's not tempered properly, and the structure is not created from the when we temper it, so all the crystals don't come together in formation, which is really important. Let's not put those. How are we going?
Slow to get up there. I think you're right though.
Oops. Oh well. Ooh, oh well. It's
Bit warmer.
actually no, it's good. Would you be able to take those other ones out of the fridge?
Sure.
I think they'll be. I'll leave that one there and we'll perhaps have a look at it once we're finished. And that way, at the moment, the chocolate is 45 degrees. And you'll see at the end also, that one's it's sort of set, but it's not set in formation. So it's when you eat it, it's a bit more grainy to eat. So it's not as nice. Also, when you probably all eaten the samples, haven't you? If you can control yourself and not just eat it and just let it sit on your tongue and just let it melt. I know it's quite difficult. I have the same problem. But if you let it melt and just sit on your tongue, then you'll feel the texture of it on your tongue, and also you'll start to get the flavours coming through as well. You'll notice more flavours in it rather than just sort of eating it and think, oh yeah, that's right. And you have some more, which is what most of us tend to do, I think. So I've got a probe thermometer. There's got one in here. You can also use like a laser thermometer, which is quite good. So if you just pull the trigger and then point, and then you see you've got the red dot. So that takes the temperature of the surface. That's 22.4 at the moment, but it's just a surface temperature. It's not a core temperature. Whereas the probe thermometer will take a core temperature. So if you take it using this one, you want to keep it moving, so then you can take a temperature and you'll get more of an accurate temperature than if you just leave it to sit, because the outside's going to cool faster. Couple of ways of tempering chocolate. Tabling method, which is sort of the traditional method, which I was going to show you now. And then we also have a seeding method, which is where we can add some tempered chocolate to it. So for this one here, I could add some of the chocolate here, because when we buy the chocolate, it's already been tempered. So those little buttons there are already tempered chocolate. So I can add some of this to here, about 20-25%, and I can, as long as I get to the right temperature, then I can temper it that way. So it's a lot less messy. What I'm going to do is on the bench, so it's a lot more messy, but it's more the traditional way of doing it. So we're only going to do a small amount. I'm not going to do a massive table, but a lot of places will do a larger quantity. Or if you're in a small bean to bar or sort of a factory, you have a machine like this one, or like the white one you can possibly see down there, and they're quite good. They hold around 25 kilo, and it will temper the chocolate for us. So when we're doing the tabling method, once we've got our chocolate up to the right temperature, then I need to put 2/3 onto the marble and leave 1/3 in the bowl. So I don't weigh it, I just go by sight. Then I need to cool this one down to around 27. And then once I've got to that temperature, then I put it back into the chocolate here, which is still at 45. So I've got 45 here, I've got the table down here at 27, and then it will bring it around to about 29. So this one here looks like it's setting, but if you touch it with your finger, it's still wet. So it's not tempered, and it looks okay. You think, oh, that's great, but it's not tempered. So when we do use couverture chocolate, we always test it before we use it, because if we put that into a mold, for example, it's not going to come out, and then we end up having to wash it out. And also we'll be using some of these ones. So these are some William Angus molds. So normally we wash them and then we polish them with cotton wool. So often we'll warm it up with a hairdryer, and then we polish it with cotton wool to help get rid of any residual that might be left from a previous time. Even when they've been washed and they look clean, sometimes you can still get a little bit of residual there. So we're going to mold those up, and then those are for everyone to taste. So as I say, I'm just going to put about 2/3 on here, and I'm just going to guess it. Go by the eye. Usually I find if I think I've got enough, usually I should put a bit more, and then I'm right. So we want to, with tempering the chocolate, it's time, temperature, and movement. So I'm going to be moving it around to cool it down. If I just leave it there, it'll start to set on the edges, and then I'm going to have lumps in the chocolate. So I'm trying to also scrape it in cleanly so I don't have too much chocolate setting around the bench, because I don't want the lumps. Which is quite a nice colour, isn't it?
Beautiful. Because that's like red skins, but only people of a certain generation will know what I'm talking about. An old confectionery. Yeah, very interesting flavour profile on the Ruby. It's quite different to the other chocolates that you've tasted. It's very sort of sherbety, very fruity.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Mm.
So let's see how we're going for temperature. So when we're tempering chocolate, when I say we need to get it to 27, if it gets to 27.5 or 28, it's not going to temper. But if I go down to say 26.5 or 26, it'll still be able to be tempered. So you're better to go a little bit lower than to go more, because it won't work if you go more. At the moment, it's still going up. But also you can see by the consistency as well, it's sort of getting a bit more sort of like custard-like, it's thicker. And we're close to 24 actually. So this is where I hope not to get it over my feet. Usually I don't have a problem. So we've got the original chocolate in the bowl at 45. We've got the one on the bench which went below 27, which is still okay. So we mix the two together, and then we hope to get a working temperature of, on there it says 28.5 to 29.5, which is a little unusual because normally they're sort of like 28, 29 or up to 31. Does anyone have any questions?
Is it still the same temperatures regardless of the chocolate type, be it white, milk or dark? Is it still the same?
It's pretty much the same, but as I was saying before, you really need to check on the bag, depending on which brand. Usually the melting temperatures, like 40 to 45, up to 50 is all right, is pretty much the same. Cooling temperatures vary a little bit between the chocolates and also the working temperature as well. So generally dark chocolate working temperature will be 30, 32. Milk is generally 29 to 31. And white is usually around 29 to 30. Again, it depends on the chocolate. Some of them vary slightly. And as I say, this one here has got a working temperature of 28.5 to 29.5, which is a little unusual, I think. Don't you find that?
It is odd. It's very cool.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? at the moment we've got 29. Let's try with this one. 28.6. So it's suggesting that the temperature is good. Always good to test it before we use it. And I'll just leave it to sit there on there so it doesn't not too cold on the marble. But I can see here on the spatula and on here that it's setting all right, which is good. So we'll give it a couple of minutes, and then we'll mould some, and then you can get to try it. Oh yes, are you going to put those on for me?
I will.
Very good.
Freshly picked this morning, everybody.
Yes, straight from the garden.
I don't know if you want to pass them around. They're beautifully fragrant. They're violets, which are an edible flower. And we believe that they will go nicely with the ruby chocolate.
So we're going to do one lot with the flowers and then one lot with the cranberries. So then you can try one of each. Well, actually, have we got enough of those? Yeah.
No, we haven't.
Oh,
They might not, probably won't sit in time. But they're for the ones with the cranberries.
all right. Yeah. Oh, we've got those other ones too.
Yes.
Unless you want to do all these these flowers, and leave those ones down there as
Yeah, could do it. Oh, I was planning on doing both.
together. Okay, sounds good.
And we have done some preparation earlier, believe it or not. So we have got some samples for you to take away as well. We call this flat mould tempering with inclusions. So in your little takeaway packs when you leave, we've got some nice white chocolate with lemon zest and rose, some milk chocolate with some nice glazed almonds,
Yep.
and then some dark chocolate with cranberries and pistachios. So we also try to choose items that we believe will go with the different flavours of chocolate. So of course, as you can imagine, white chocolate is, as you've just tasted, it's really sweet. So that's why we've decided with lemon. And some of you I know have been up earlier and sampled some of our lollipops. And we've got a tropical one that's really acidic. So got a lot of passion fruit in it, so it's quite sharp, perfect with white chocolate to try and balance that super
Yeah,
sweetness.
the sweetness and acidity.
We have no end of fun tampering with recipes.
Yeah. So looking at the chocolate here, that one there that I've just tempered, and it's set. I can see that it's set already, and when I touch it, it's fine. This one here is still. See how it's still sort of. If I touch it, it sort of melts on my finger. That was the one that wasn't tempered. So that's just straight from the container. So let's get this one in the mould. Oh, maybe I'll... So when we do any moulded chocolates, when we fill it, we always sort of either tap it a bit on the side to help release any air bubbles that might be trapped where the chocolate meets the mould. We also have on these machines, we have like vibrating tables where we put it on and it will just vibrate and it will help to release those air bubbles. And then Susan's going to be good enough to, I'll just, there we go. Thank you. How many people prefer the white chocolate? No one. Gosh,
I think people are too embarrassed to admit it.
that's okay. Don't be ashamed. Milk. Oh yeah, so about 30% dark. Okay, about 30% too.
What do you prefer?
Actually, I sort of like them all, but I guess I go more for the dark. I like 65% is a good mix, I find. But also, I've had some 100% Colombian before, and it's been like a Lindt 70%. It was actually naturally quite sweet. And also talking on chocolate, the when you taste it, you get that smooth texture in your mouth. Cadbury, for example, when they make their chocolate, they put it into the chocolate into a conch at the end once it's sort of made, and Cadbury's do theirs for about 20 hours in a conch in a machine, and Lindt do theirs for 72. So you can see the difference between Lindt is quite smooth, whereas Cadbury, if you have Lindt and then go back to Cadbury, you'll find it's quite sort of coarse. It's a bit like eating sand and rocks, I think it is. So as they say, these are some I prepared earlier. Yeah. So we put them in the fridge, or we've got this long thing here's a cooling tunnel. It's refrigerated, so you can put chocolates in there. They'll be wet at this end, and then when they come out the other end, they're set and they're ready to go. So you can make it as fast or as slow as you like, depending on what you're putting through. And we can do the same with these. So these have gone into the fridge for about 5 to 10 minutes just to help set them a little bit quicker. It's harder to tell on these, but normally when you look behind them, you can see when it's contracted away from the mold or not. So these ones have. If they haven't, normally you see sort of darker spots. It's more obvious on dark chocolate. It's less obvious on the white or the ruby. But normally we give them just a little bit of a twist to help release them. And then we turn them over. Oh, there we go. Yeah. One or two little air bubbles. Oh, very good. Sometimes they don't all pop out at once. Sometimes you just might tap the mold, but they've come out good, which is good. And then we can taste these ones, and then when the other ones in a few minutes, they can come out, and then we can try those. And then of course we've got the take-home packs. You'll be sick of chocolate, won't you, by the time you've finished? Breakfast. Actually, I did have some for breakfast this morning. Not the ruby. I just had the extra bitter. I just had to check that it was okay still. Quality control. So we'll just give ours a few more minutes in the. How many people like that one? You get the sort of the fruitiness. It's got a little bit of acidity to it, which is the citric acid they put in when they produce it.
Very crunchy and smooth.
Yeah, it's just quite smooth, isn't it? Yeah. Chocolate's coming a little bit like coffee. Specialty coffee is very much getting into things like different sorts of fermentations, anaerobic, and also inclusions when they ferment it as well, adding different flavours in there when they ferment it. And it's, very, very similar. And often you get coffee farms and chocolate farms are in the same regions, the same areas, altitude, all that sort of thing as well. Actually, if you want, you could even pass that around, and you could, if you want to touch it, you can just see that it's still not set, and that was what I did before, and then that one is quite set, and you can tell. Actually, no, when you break it, it's got more of a snap to it. Now you have less snap with the white and the milk, but the darker one you get a lot more definite snap. But if you want if you want to pass that around and have a look or even have a touch, even though it looks nice and shiny, you think, oh, that looks great. It's no good.
So no matter how cool that gets, it won't.
Yeah, it will eventually set, and it will. Oh, thanks. It will eventually set, and it will be. It'll be like. Or the other one that I had. It'll set, but it will be sort of. It won't be shiny, and it won't have a snap. And when you eat it, it won't have that sort of melt in the mouth texture. And yeah, as I say, it will eventually set, and probably tomorrow it'll be set, but it still won't be. It won't be as sticky when you touch it. Anyone any questions?
How long have you been working with chocolate for?
Probably 30, 40 years. Probably since I was in my early 20s. Back in the 80s. It's giving away my age, isn't it? But yeah, probably good 35 years, probably a little bit longer. Because I'm originally from New Zealand, where I did an apprenticeship for a chef, and then I wanted to specialise in patisserie, or pastry. So I went to London, and then I did my patisserie qualifications in London, and then worked in Switzerland. And that's in Europe is where I got all my skills for making chocolate, and then come back here. But I've also worked here in Chocolatier Australia, and also some of the hotels and things like that. So sometimes doing it full time, sometimes just part of the job that we do. But it's good. I find it really interesting and rewarding as well. It's good.
Do you have a favourite chocolate brand?
Actually, no. I used to have Lindt, but I'm actually gone off Lindt a bit, and I'm going more towards the single origins. And also, I like supporting the smaller bean to bar companies. So in the last 10 years, it probably started a bit in America, and it's sort of getting around the world. There's a lot of small bean to bar manufacturers. Like we've got quite a few here in Melbourne, and all over the world, where they're just using the cacao beans and sugar and just roasting it, grinding it, and making their own chocolate. And some of those ones are really interesting because you get different flavours of the regions of where they come from. And
Was Melbourne one? Monsieur Truth?
yeah, Monsieur Truth, yes. Actually, one of their people that used to work there was a student here a couple of years ago. Yes, and she brought some chocolate in, which was very nice. And there's also Ratio Chocolate, which was on that one before. There's Pain au Chocolat as well. There's Bird Snake, Curve down on the peninsula. So we have got a few that do it. Don't be confused with like Chocolatieri in the Yarra Valley and down the Great Ocean Road. I mean, they use the Belgian Callebaut chocolate, and they've got similar equipment to what we have here, but they're bigger. And they don't make their own chocolate, not that I know of recently anyway. And they generally use the Callebaut chocolate, which is still good. It's more of a generic one, but I guess I tend towards the smaller companies, the bean to bar, and I like trying the different percentages in that as well. Surprising how much they change. You know, you can have 100% which tastes horrible, and then you can taste another 100% which is actually quite nice. You know, it does vary quite a lot. Any other questions? No? Sorry, I didn't quite.
Or how's it like changed as you've worked decade after decade? Like, what have you?
There's certainly a lot more going towards the single origins and trying different fermentations, like these two little ones here. You know, the Q fermentation, which adding enzymes into it. The single origins, people are going, that's sort of come about a lot more. Whereas years ago it was mainly like the white milk and dark. You could get some coloured ones and flavoured. Like for example, you can buy, these people also do the caramel one. But if you wanted to, you could make your own. So what you would do, you get some white chocolate. We do it here in one of the units that we do, white chocolate, and then we put it onto a baking tray, and then we bake it in the oven at a low temperature, about 130, 140, for about an hour, and then it looks like it goes grainy and horrible, but if you spread it and then put it back in the oven, it takes about an hour, and it will caramelize the white chocolate. and then you can temper it, and it's actually really quite nice. So you can also adjust the how much caramelization you have in it as well by making it yourself. And also, when we were talking before about if you wanted to make your own chocolate, if you took these and just grind them up in like a food processor, because there's 50% cocoa butter in there or fat, then it would become like a paste, and you could actually temper it, and it's quite thick to work with, but you could make your own chocolate if you wanted to, and then you could add whatever sugar you wanted. If you wanted 20% sugar, and then you really need to, once you've added the sugar, you need to, like a small conch or refiner, to grind it so that the sugar dissolves into it. But just grinding that up by itself, it'll form a paste. Wait a minute. You can see it's a little bit difficult to see, but there are some darker spots behind there. It's difficult to see because of the colour, but I'm going to hurry it up a little bit so that we can try it. Thank you, Susan.
So I don't think anybody's had enough chocolate yet.
No, definitely not. Now you can see with this one, there's a couple that have stuck. Or maybe there we go. I think it's simply getting. How did we find the single origins when you tasted them? Could you taste any different? Yeah.
Wasn't as smooth the texture.
It varies depending on what they've done, what they've made, and that sort of thing. But they can be. It depends how much they refine it for. Because when we refine the chocolate, there's a couple of ways of doing it. You can have, once we've made you've got the sugar and the nibs and that, you've grinded up to a paste. You can either put it through a roller mill, which is like steel rollers, and it runs through multiple rollers, and to refine it down to what we call a micron, and that's the size of the particles in the chocolate. Normally we're aiming for around 20 to 25 microns, and that gives a nice smooth texture on the palate. And then we have a Melanger, which is there's a circular one, which we've got. There's one down there in the end room there with that silver thing that you can see, and it's got sort of like metal blades inside, and it goes around like that. And there's also the traditional stone on stone, so it's stone ground where you've got it's like a granite base, and then you've got two big wheels in it, and you put the mix into there once you've made up your mix, and then it just goes around and it grinds it and makes it even finer, and then you can just stop it when you get to the right micron size that you want. They're the main ones. Also, some that recently they've brought out what they call ball refiners. It's like ball bearings in a tank, and they put the chocolate in there, and that rotates, and that actually refines it a lot quicker. But I like the traditional one with stone on stone. I think it's a good way to go. Any other questions? Well, I think we're just about done there. And Susan, when on your way out, Susan's got some little packs to take away so you can try. As she mentioned before, there's 3 different, it's got white milk and dark in those packs with some different inclusions on the back. Hope you enjoy them, and I hope you enjoyed your session.